The purpose of this is obviously to stoke the fears. The timing is, suspect because it was before the midterm election. So they wanted to reinforce that Trump looks strong, right? They wanted to reinforce that the Republicans are tough on immigration and all these different things. And it's really a show. It's the scary thing about this is that if any violence occurs, it'll obviously be from all these soldiers and border patrol on the border. My guess is it'll be that which will start it. It won't be these people. So my name is Christopher Carmona. I'm a writer, and for the past 6 years, I've been researching this particular history, which we refer to as the Matanza, from the Rio Grande Valley history from about 1904 to about 1920. That's what the people called it. People call it that because it was referred to as this massacre of, at certain times, hundreds of Mexican Americans by the Texas Rangers and other law enforcement agencies. About 100 years ago, when the military was deployed to this area, it was deployed then because of what's called the Sedicios, or something called the Plan de San Diego, which was an effort to retake the Southwest from the U.S. government, and so that's why the government troops were officially sent. But that military deployment was to quell the rebellion, and the rebellion itself wasn't really a rebellion. It was a lot of local, what we call vigilantes nowadays, responding to the violence of the Texas Rangers. The common, rhetoric that they would use is they would say that they're there to stop bandits. And so they use the word, and you see a lot of times of banditry or bandits being used as a term, and so they would kill these people, and they would call them bandits, saying that they were caught them doing all these different things. And most of the time, I would say about 90% of the time, they were just either vaqueros who worked the land, people who worked for them, or even the landowners themselves. And of course, now we're dealing with what Ta-Nehisi Coates calls the first white president.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
And his rhetoric and everything, his entire campaign started with calling Mexicans rapists and drug dealers and criminals. And so the term has become criminal, right, or gang member. But this all goes back to this term called bandits, right? That kind of rhetoric appeals to, the white supremacist fears. And there's a lot of that that he's stoked. And we can see that since he's been president. It was obvious from the very get-go, but that is something that he's stoking. It has nothing to do with the border culture. It has to do with the Midwest and keeping his base. And so he's using the same techniques because they work, right? People he calls bandits is calling us criminals, and that's just a constant practice, and it works. They stoke the fears, and here we are again, deploying another 5,000 troops to the border. For what? No idea. No, so the deployment of the troops is very scary. It's very scary because it's reminiscent of what happened here 100 years ago. It's reminiscent of what the terror of the community was back then. There is no sense of safety. There is a sense that this is escalated to a place where that's actually might cause real violence. There's no real cause for it. There hasn't been a real threat on the border in a long time. And so, but it has that same effect. Well, it's the same reason we should always know the histories of things, because there is a lot of people, especially when we're looking at peoples on the border, who don't. And not knowing your history leads to a lot of psychological conditions. Not being connected, not knowing, because the history that we learn down, and especially when you're living within colonized communities, which we all are, there is this sense that we don't belong. And when you realize that this land was owned by Mexicans, U.S. Mexicans, for a long time before the white Anglo power structure gets here, it gives you a sense of this land does belong to you. And that is something that once you get this history, you see yourself in the history books, you see yourself in different things. There's a self-esteem that gets built. There's a connection that you're not an outsider.